coach of the Minnesota Wild. He's just the head coach. According to, did Mike Russo break this morning?
No, I think the Wild.
They sent an announcement.
The Wild just announced it this morning.
Yeah.
So he is he's the head coach, 55 years old, and he's never been a head coach before in the NHL at least. So what is this sort of surprise? Here's my question to you guys, Judd's Hockey Show crew. Is this sort of like when the Gophers basketball team, after COVID hits, maybe they were on the fence about Richard Pitino, but then they're like, okay, hiring a new coach and going through that whole process during COVID is impossible.
Right.
Let's just roll it forward, like give him another chance next year.
Right.
Have they seen enough of Evason to make this the move that makes sense? Or is it more just like, there's just so many things going on, and it's just going to be too hard to get the search that we want and
It's
get
the
face-to-face
latter.
with people?
So Dean coached 12 games, all right? 8-4, which is fine. 12 games though. Here's where I think what you just said as far as Bill Guerin and the Wild's thinking is correct, Phil. But here's where it was too quick, and here's why they moved in a direction that they didn't have to, okay? We're going to have the qualifying round. Like, best case, if you are the team, you win, you beat Vancouver in the qualifying round, you play some playoff games.
Mm-hmm.
You get some high-pressure games in which to evaluate this guy as your coach. If you hadn't removed the interim tag from him, though, keep in mind, we're not going to go from Stanley Cup awarded 2 weeks off training camp, all right? We're probably not going to start the season in hockey until, I would guess, late December or perhaps as late as Jan 1.
Yeah, Jan 1 would be the logical start.
So, like, you had a lot of time here to make a decision off of what you saw in this sample size, which could be fairly substantial or could be very quick, that they're going to go play in the Edmonton bubble. But instead, I think they thought what you said, because a 2-year extension is really nothing. Like, you could fire him easy on that and just pay that off.
And he's not one of the highest paid coaches by any means.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I believe that they basically said everything's in a whirlwind. It's all an unknown. The dichotomies here that, if you compare them, are so intriguing is it's the polar opposite to what the Vikings are doing. Like with Zim saying, we'll send you into the final year of your contract and you can coach this team during a pandemic. And the Wild's like, oh, no, that's a bad idea. We'll take immediate stability. But I do think that the Wild probably moved too quickly, because why not take these games that we're about to see starting on August 2nd? Why not take those games, look at them and say, you know what, he did a really good job, or, oh boy, there's some red flags here. They didn't do that. I'm a little bit surprised. Is this going to derail them? Absolutely not. Did they have more time than they probably thought or assumed? Absolutely.
I think when you look at it, it's definitely comfort. They want the comfortable guy, and the guy who was leading them to a very good charge over that last month. And the free agent coaches that are out there, Gerard Gallant is probably the biggest name. He coached the Vegas Knights to the Stanley Cup in their first year just 2 seasons ago. He was in Montreal for a long time. Well-respected coach. Probably will get a gig once ever this return to play ends and the free agency begins. But I think Evason was able to get offense out of this team in a short period of time that this team desperately needs, even with being a defensive first team. Like, Greg Wyshynski did an article on this change in April. And he said, he was talking to Marcus Foligno, and Foligno said, if you compare Bruce and Dean, as in Bruce Boudreau, I think Bruce was more defensive first, and we're totally a defensive first team, but the league is too good now. The defense all seems to be good offensive players. You got to go for offense. You got to score. And I think when you look at Kevin Fiala, the way he played down the last 8 weeks of the season, you need to have offense first, and you can still be a defensive first team with strong blue line and still go out and attack and not be afraid in the offensive zone.
Why wouldn't you just wait? Like, you're being gifted games. Like, the Lord is coming to you and saying, here are games to watch to make your decision. You don't need to make. It just seems to me to be, and if the goal is stability is going to help us in the qualifying round and tournament that they're about to play, I'm sorry. I will go back to what I've been saying. You have a 12.5% chance if you get bounced to win the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Take that.
Maybe that was part of the deal. Maybe Evason said, "Listen, I'll tank you. I'll tank you."
If he did, good for him.
You give me a contract extension.
There's a little. I fear that there's a little bit of a play here to try and be as successful as possible in a bubble. The thing that soccer is teaching us about all of these bubbles and about sports in 2020, the thing that we are learning is this. We as humans can try and convince ourselves all we want. Oh, man, these championships are legit. No asterisk. We are back to normal. Nothing is back to normal. Anything we do is a feel-good adventure right now.
Yeah.
But everything that we do for the rest of 2020 can almost be taken as let's see how it goes, right? So this whole thing of we won the Stanley Cup in 2000. No, you won a little feel-good tournament, and we were all glad to have sports back. I want to make one thing very clear. I'm not putting sports down, sports being back. It does feel weird to me, but I'm not putting down the fact that I enjoy games being back. But no rational human being should take any of this as being absolutely the norm of we won the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
Yeah, but don't you think the regular seasons are definitely off the rails at this point, and the fact that there's no fans even for playoff games, I get that it's all a different vibe. But once you get into the Major League Baseball tournament, if you will, once you get into the NHL Stanley Cup tournament, I don't think you just write it off. I think you can say, well, all right, there weren't really any home crowd advantages, and so therefore, like you didn't get
right.
all of the variables that
we're
would
going to have games called because of COVID.
Yeah, let's
it's
see
just
what
not
happens.
going to be normal.
If they play a 90%, normal format, other than there not being home ice or home field advantages, like that's definitely a big deal. I'm just saying, it sounds like you're saying like all of this is exhibition for the rest of the year and none of it matters. And I'm saying, okay, it's definitely not like playing a full season in front of full arenas. But it matters to some extent. If the Wild, well, that's a bad example because I think we're all rooting for them to just get the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, thank you.
If the Twins win the World Series,
yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
It's going to be celebrated to some extent.
Absolutely,
yes.
yes.
It's not going to be like, oh, they just won the Grapefruit League.
I expect, and it should be. My point being, though, is you also have an opportunity here, I think, in sports and in business to experiment and try things. And if you think to yourself, yeah, I'm going to treat this like I do the 162 baseball season, that to me is faulty. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and win, and the Twins should try and be good, but it's not the norm. And you're going to have games interrupted and or not played because of COVID and things like that. I'm just saying I think that the focus of how we go about things can be shifted. But to the Wild point, I'm just surprised they didn't take this series of games and use them as a way to further evaluate the head coach.
Yeah, well,
Dean Evason.
So just back to a point that Declan made a couple minutes ago about Kevin Fiala. So Kevin Fiala this season emerged as one of the bright young stars. It might be too aggressive to say like in the league because he should still prove it, but that dude has become a legitimate scoring player in the league at this point. Mm-hmm. He was the leading scorer through 60, 70 games, whatever it was for the Wild. And he already through 64 games himself set a career points record, just a personal career points record. So if one of the variables is, okay, how well does a head coaching candidate, in this case Dean Evason, work with the up-and-coming wave of players, that might be the first thing on my list. I think the ship has sort of sailed. Like Parisi's on the team and Suter's on the team. Those guys are, and Koivu, like those guys are 35 years old. I'm no longer catering my head coaching search and hires to those guys. I definitely want those guys to get along with my coach. But to me, Fiala and Kaprizov, and that remains to be seen. Like, is he going to start? There was a report this morning that he's going to be able to maybe work out with the team, but not play in these games.
Yeah, he can sign, but can't play in the resumption of play, and then could play starting with the 2020-21 season. But he can be with the team in the bubble.
So that's good. It's a good first step. Get him in the bubble and see how he interacts with guys. But would you guys agree with that assessment that it's more important to me if they deem, listen, Dean Evason and Kevin Fiala have a connection, and that's more important than like whatever Zach Parisi thinks of him the next 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely. But why wouldn't you then see in the resumption of play how Fiala does?
Because I think
it's such a small. If they get 5 games or something,
it could be 3 games.
Right, but you have no hurry. Like there was no reason. There's no reason to make the announcement today. Like if I can get 3 more games, great. Let's say I can get 8 more games. Even better.
It is a curious move in that, like, this is where we don't know
It's
what we
the
don't
timing. That's my point.
know. I'd want to know more about how does the room feel about him? What is his X's and O's strategy and tactics behind the scenes that led them to offensive outbursts? And like, all we can do is sort of go off of what they say in interviews and what we see in analytics and what we see with our own eyes.
And he might be very good, but you had another opportunity to conduct a search. Why wouldn't you take it?
Would you rather go with, just in general, so take Dean Evason out for both you guys, would you guys rather go with a well-known veteran name coach who's been who maybe is in his mid-50s, like, is it Gallant? Who did you just say? The guy from, the guy who brought Las Vegas to the Cup Finals. Mm-hmm. A guy like that, or the next Mike, like the Mike Yo type, Dean Evason, where two different ages for those guys, but like who's been kind of waiting their turn.
A minor league coach.
Yep, assistant, minor league coach, someone who hasn't gotten a shot yet. Which profile of coach would you rather take a shot on?
I would probably, with this group, take a shot on the latter. If I had if I had a team I thought was on the precipice of winning, I'd probably go with the former. But again, if I have time I love time to judge. I love time to see. Like Dean coached 12 games. And we've had 4 months off, and I'm sure he's done a great job of keeping in touch with players. I'm sure he seems like he has the ability to be a good coach.
Yeah.
I'm only talking about the timing and the fact that I could have gotten more of a read on him as a coach. And I love the return to play because it puts you into a high pressure situation immediately with potential adversity, right? Like it's the perfect recipe if I'm a GM for me to judge things. But with this team right now, to your point, Phil, about Parisi and Suter are going to be there, but they're definitely not probably the guys that you should be super concerned about, despite the fact that I'm sure they would still like that. I would rather go with a coach that I think would have the best chance with this next group of kids, and Dean might be that guy. So I'm not saying it's a bad hire. I'm saying I don't really understand the timing because you had more time to do this.
Yeah, I would say it's about elevating the young players around you. And Bruce Boudreau, who is a phenomenal coach and was able to milk everything out of players. I mean, he was able to get Mikhail Granlund, Niederreiter, and Coyle to that next step. They were able to take the next step consistently like we always wanted them to, but he would put guys like Kevin Fiala in the doghouse. He scratched Kevin Fiala a few times at the beginning of this last season because of offensive zone mistakes. And if Dean Evason is saying, you know what, you're going to make an offensive zone mistake. You're going to create a turnover and we're going to get in transition and it could be potentially bad, but don't be afraid to make the mistake. And I think the Wild in general have been a very passive team with this core and no one who wants to take the puck, go up and down the ice, or isn't afraid to make that mistake in the offensive zone. And I think Evason allows players to be in that position to be successful.
Real quick thing on NHL coaches here. It's always fun to look at the revolving door of NHL coaches.
He'll last 3 years, by the way.
But that's the standard.
Or 2.5.
That was actually going to be my question. Of the, what are the 31 teams in the NHL right now? And, this is right. So 25 of the 31 coaches have been with their teams 3 years or less. So only 6 coaches in the NHL have been with their current teams for more than 3 years. That's how it works in the NHL. I mean, it's like this is getting stale, and so we're just gonna change it up.
Man, they blow people out constantly.
Yeah.
The one thing that I will defend Bruce on too, that's not really a fair thing, is when Dean got the job, and my guess is that Bill Guerin played a big role. The Wild started to play a more exciting, high tempo game. One is when they started that, there were a lot of guys that they asked that to do that I said, I wonder if they can do this for 20 games. We didn't get to 20, okay?
Yeah.
Like, you skate Eric Stahl's ass off. He's nearing my age.
But I would argue that because he's nearing your age, whether Eric Stahl can skate for 20 games or not at that age, I don't care.
But I'm defending Bruce.
If Fiala can.
I get that. But I'm defending Bruce and saying Bruce was trying to do the best he possibly could over the long haul with a team that had some components that are pretty good and some components that are aging. And don't forget, when Bruce had the Capitals, guess who loved offensive hockey at times? Bruce did.
For sure.
So this whole thing of, Dean took the team and did what Bruce couldn't do. Dean did it for 12 games. And also, and this is, and I told Dex this too before, this is my fear, and this is across the board, interim coaches, right? Bang, the brief, oh, that guy's gone, and now I'm going to play for this guy. And guess what? The guys that turn on Bruce will probably turn on Dean eventually. And we saw this with Yo. We saw this with Torchetti. So this assumption that this was a breath of fresh air and it's going to last, it's the last part.
Yeah.
It's a breath of fresh air, and a lot of people say, I'm energized and I want to win now because I was tired of Bruce's act. Okay, let's get through 40 games of next year with Dean and see if those guys are still as energized as they were on February 14th when Bruce got fired.
All right, let me ask you guys this one more thing, and there's plenty more to discuss, and I do hope that we do get to see the Wild in a 4-game sweep at the hands of Vancouver. So they can
3
get
games.
5-game series.
3 out of 5. They
Yeah.
could be done in 3 games.
So just get over
12.5% chance of that top pick.
Be fun to watch these guys. But I'm going to give you guys some names. I'm going to take these veteran players off the board. I'm going to take everyone over the age of basically 28 or 29 off the board. So in addition to Suter off the board, Stahl, Parisi, Spurgeon's 30. I'm taking him off the board. Which of these players, just give me a yes or no as I go through these. Which of these players are you looking to build around for the next 3 to 5 years? Like, which guys are you saying, I'm pretty sure I want that guy on my roster for the next 3 to 5 years?
Are you throwing names towards us or
Yep.
just ask us? Okay.
So Fiala
Yep.
and Kaprizov, I think, are obvious
yes.
yeses. Cunnin.
I'm yes. I think he's got captain material in him, and I think there's more to his game. I'm very impressed with him. I like him.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good one.
Eriksson Ek.
He is a very solid defensive third line center. If you accept his role and don't try and make too much of, don't try and make him into a player he's not. I think he can be a very, very solid member of this team. But to me, I want him trying to win faceoffs, third line center.
And maybe what I should add to this conversation is, are they top 6 forwards or top 4 defensemen? All
Okay.
right? So,
Eriksson Ek, I would say probably is not ideally a top 6 forward.
Yep.
Dex?
I pretty much agree with everything Judd said there. Yeah, he's a very good role player, but I honestly think his ceiling might have been reached already.
Get Brock Besser.
Greenway. Jordan Greenway.
I think Declan and I differ on this. I think if he sees his potential through, he is. But I watched Charlie Coyle not do the same exact thing. So what Dex is going to say, I think, is a rightful fear.
Yeah, I'm out.
No, I do.
I'm totally out on Jordan Greenway.
He's younger than Fiala.
He is a young dude, and it's hard to give up on young guys especially when you're trying to get younger. But I just don't want to be in the same rut of Charlie Coyle. Oh, his size, he can do all this, he can do all that. At the end of the day, can you do this consistently? Can you do this throughout your entire career?
Yeah.
And I would use him as trade bait. So I'm out. I'm out on Jordan.
I'd give him a year with the new coach and see.
All right.
And if we get the same act, then I'm done because then it's a him problem and it has nothing to do with coaching.
Brodin and Dumba.
Dumba, yes. I'm in on both those
Brodin?
guys. I think Brodin's going to be gone in some type of trade here, but yes, I'm in on both. I love both those guys.
I like both. Yep, I would keep both.
What about, I'll give you a couple more here. Ryan Donato.
Judd?
I can't
23 years old.
Okay, I can't go top 6. I just can't. But they need to give him a great chance to play, and they need to allow him to fail to prove to me that he can't play, because that's the one thing. It always appeared that they were afraid to play him because he might fail. Well, your team's not good enough. Like, if you're a Stanley Cup team, that's a fine stance to take. But if you are the Wild, I need to see him fail. And basically, so far, I've just seen him not given a fair chance.
Yeah, Judd brings up a good point. He should be able to get more ice time for sure and more opportunities to be successful. But I also just think I trust evaluations, and if the staff and they don't believe he's a good hockey player, then you move on.
I'll give you one more. I'll give you Capo.
Kakinen, the goalie.
The goaltender,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
he's my guy next year. In fact,
He's the only one under 32.
he's my guy. He's my guy in the qualifying round against the Canucks. I'd play him.
Yeah, I probably would too.
I'd play him,
What
and
do you
I'd
have to
say,
lose?
let's see.
Why would you dust off your veteran goaltenders for this?
Dust off Dubnyk.
If he gives up 6 goals, great. He got to learn, and the Wild got to draft
Bill
number
Guerin
1. It's great.
told us last week that this is going to be open competitions basically in this camp, and they are going to go with, in goal, the hot hand.
Mm-hmm.
My guess, Dex, is that they want Stalock, because he was playing so well before the stoppage, that they want him to win the job. But I've said since day one, Capo's my guy because, as Phil said, why not? I want to find out.
Yeah, Capo, you need to give him a chance. And also, the Wild should not be. There's a belief out there, I feel like, because the Wild's goaltending in general was pretty poor last season, that they need to go out and sign a goalie. Matt Murray's a free agent. Brayton Holtby's a free agent. Go sign a big goalie. Do not do that until your window is for sure open. I think overpaying for goaltending is a very dangerous road. and you should just ride your league average guys and see if Kaapo Kähkönen, serviceable guy, is your next dude.
I agree. I know much less about hockey than you two guys do, but I can tell you, playing goaltender, the difference between the average and bad goaltenders and the top goaltenders is a razor thin margin over the course of 100, 100 days, or 100 games, including postseason. So like, why spend $3 or $4 or $5 million on someone when you're not ready to win a Stanley Cup?
Find a center.
And that's the big one.
Keep in mind, too, for the next 2 years, we have found out now, the salary cap is going to basically stay flat, all right? Flat. So you can't
That's actually a good that's good compared to some of the other leagues.
It is.
It honestly is.
It is, but that also means that if you thought that you might have room to go out and screw around, you don't now. So to Declan's point, you have to make a decision. And if I could address one position on this team ASAP and upgrade, center.
Top line.
Center. Top line. Well, center. But if it's a 2 who is an improvement on Stahl, that's at least a start.
Yeah, I'd go there.
But my point is in lockstep, Declan, with you, which is if you say to yourself, well, we could get this center and he's okay, he's going to be pretty good, but I'd rather have this goaltender. That's not the move for now.